Welcome to the 21 Convention, Miami, Florida, 2016. And we're about to bring on a pretty amazing speaker. This guy is really a legend in the industry of men's development. And I really want to emphasize that because it isn't just about dating, it's about living a life of excellence, which he has done and taught and worked with so many men to achieve. We're going to hear an interesting speech today that has to do with wanting and then how to get those things, wanting and having. So without any further ado, let's bring on Brent Smith.
Thanks, buddy.
Stuff, man. Yeah.
Thanks. Good to be here. How's everybody? Well. Good? Okay. So, as Steve kind of alluded to, I spend most of my time working and guiding the lifestyles of financially successful men. And part of that is their lifestyle that includes socializing, social life, and dating and relationships. And they usually come in two different styles. I've got the young guys who are tech guys or engineers or coders, or they're the founders of startups, and they spend a lot of time writing code, a lot of time in their bedroom, a lot of time in a cubicle. They lack a lot of social skills. But they're financially well off. I also have another section of guys who are a little bit more advanced than that. They may be a little bit older. They've got some of the toys of a nice lifestyle, but they haven't figured out how to navigate it. They're still a little socially awkward. We call them, well, I kind of call them creepy sometimes. So we got some creepy guys whose approach to it is still not where they want. They've got everything else, but what they don't have is they don't have that part of their life down. The last piece of the puzzle is what they usually tell me. They say, Brent, I've got everything, but the last piece of the puzzle is this thing with women. Whether it's socially, I'm great in the boardroom, but I'm terrified to walk up to a table of girls over there, or a table of people for that matter, when I'm not in my element and say something. I'm terrified, and this is surprising to most people. So why am I telling you this? Because if you're the average guy out there, which is definitely how I started out, there's a common denominator that everybody suffers from. So the average guy shares some of the same issues that a financially well-off guy does, a super rich guy or whatever. And that is that there's something they don't have. But there's something that they want. And they focus all of their energy on the wanting of it. Now, I think that that is one of the biggest stumbling blocks to actually having what you want. It's your wanting of it. Now, before you start thinking, well, Brent, how can I have something if I don't want it? Good question, and that's what I'm going to answer here today. I'm going to teach you how to stop wanting and start having what you want. And you'll understand what I'm saying as we get further into this conversation. I also want to say that throughout this talk, please ask questions if you want clarity. Ask me questions about what I'm talking about, because I really want to know what you want. And you probably have the same wants as a lot of guys out there watching this. Okay? So, wanting, I've figured out in my life, equals lack. This is why wanting is negative and just focusing on negativity, okay? If you just focus on want, a lot of people, they're wanting, they're trying, they're becoming, and really in life, there's only three things. There's being, doing, and then having. But what we do is we focus on what we don't have, right? We focus on the lack of it, right? It's just normal that we would do that. Doesn't make you a bad person, that's just being human. So you focus on, Brent, I want this, I want that, I want the other thing, I want more women in my life, I want more beautiful women in my life, I want more money, I want a bigger house, a nicer car, whatever your wants are, we end up focusing on that and just focusing on that. And then our story in our head is just consumed by that, right? We become obsessed by what we want. And so, today, I'm going to teach you how to actually start having what it is that you want, and it's a pretty easy process. But I do want to continue to talk a little bit about wanting and why it's not going to get you where you want to be. Okay? So wanting and focusing on just the wanting is the thing that causes you to actually over-communicate with people. Have any of you ever over-communicated with a woman before? Right? Yes, me too. Anyone else? Right, so you guys have. So the wanting of it and the thinking that we actually need it for our survival is the thing that's causing us to push it away from us, okay? Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't want what you want, okay? So I'm not saying that anything is bad that you want, right? But it's all relative. So it just depends on how you go about having it. So if you're just focusing on the want, and your whole story is, I want this, but I don't have it, want equates to lack, so you're just focusing on the lack of it. Wanting causes you to over-pursue women in this case, but it could be anything. You over-pursue anything that you're obsessed that you don't have. So it causes all these negative things to start happening. And instead, if you just focused on having what you want, you would actually have it much sooner. Okay? So the one thing I'll promise you is that if you really listen to what I'm talking about here today and you follow what I'm going to tell you, that you will not only have like 10 times more than you want right now, you'll get 10 times more than what you actually want, but you'll actually receive it effortlessly. So people will actually walk up and hand it to you. Women will come up and give you stuff, okay? Because we're taught as men, we got to go out there and we got to want it, so we focus on the wanting, we go out there and we try to make it happen. And the problem with that is, if you ever run into someone who really wants something badly and is kind of desperate and needy, you guys probably have all seen that, right? Or you've probably done that. I know I've done it. But you don't want to give it to them, do you? Right? Because they want it. You can tell they're like needy and they just have this weird vibe about them and you're like, oh, it's so creepy. I know this person is trying to get something from me, so I'm going to hold it back from them. So imagine what women feel like when you approach them and you've got this kind of wanting vibe. So it's about reversing that and becoming someone who actually adds value to conversations and adds value to interactions as opposed to constantly being desperate and needy in interactions with people. So, how do you really do that? The way you do that is you change the conversation that you're having with yourself about it, okay? So, you may have heard me talk about this before, but basically, the reason that you're living your life the way you're living it, and you have the issues that you have, and you have the identity that you currently have, is because you've created it. Okay, it's that conversation that you have with yourself over and over all day long in the background. Like when you wake up in the morning, you walk in front of the mirror, and you look, and you either like what you see, you don't like what you see, you have all these thoughts about yourself and your life, and it's this conversation that needs to be changed. But we make up all these excuses for why we don't have what it is that we want, right? We have all kinds of excuses. We say, well, I don't have what I want because, and then we have our own personal list of stuff. Does anyone want to stand up or take the mic and tell me what it is that they want? An example?
Procrastinate too much.
So you want to be more efficient and effective. Do you want to take action?
Yes.
Right? Okay. So is your story that you are a procrastinator?
Yes.
Okay, and how do you word that when you say that, when you think about it?
I can't have what I want because I know I'll procrastinate till the very end.
Okay. Okay, you're right. That's a story, right? That's your story. And why do you procrastinate? Or why can't you get things done? Other than procrastination, like why do you think that you can't overcome it?
Just because I know from past experience what, past experience kind of gives you an idea of what it's going to be like in the future.
Okay, so that's kind of an excuse, right? Because you do have the capacity. All you have to do is change your story about it, but that's a story. So you see how he's created that identity. I'm a procrastinator. And what I want is to take action. So the way to do that is to now tell yourself that you just take action. So it's changing the conversation with yourself. Okay? Does that make sense?
Do you need a story? Do you need to make a new story for everything you want to change, or is it just a
Good question.
stop doing this?
Well, it's replacing what you're already doing with this new conversation. Okay? So thank you for talking about that, bringing that up, because that's a very good point. That's the exciting part about all this. This is not a new skill that I'm teaching you that you have to learn from scratch. You're already doing it. So you're already having the conversation. You already know how to do it. You know how to worry. You know how to be obsessive. You also know how to fantasize and daydream and so on. You're already doing it. So it's just putting different information in the machine now. So it's you saying, I take action. Basically, it's changing that story every time you think about it. Every time that you feel it coming on, where you say, well, you know, I didn't get that done because I'm a procrastinator and I'm the victim and you don't understand, I don't have enough time and it's all these other people's fault or whatever it is that you're blaming. It's just taking responsibility and then saying, actually, I take action. So it could mean in the realm of women or socializing, it's I take action. I approach people every time I see them. I approach hot women or women who are exactly my type every time I have the opportunity, rather than, I kind of procrastinate, so I stand in this area and I get nervous and if I only had more confidence and you don't understand, I'm shy and all this kind of stuff. Okay, does that make sense? Oh, yeah. Okay, anyone else? I saw a hand over here.
Yeah, when I think about what I want more discipline, want more energy, and want more money as well.
Cool, why don't you have it?
Because sometimes...
Because those things are really easy to get, you know. They're really actually very simple to have. Why don't you have them?
Well, right now I have the resources, but I haven't exactly put in all of the effort and everything just into that. So I just got the resources, and
okay.
I just have to put it.
And so why haven't you put in the effort?
Because I was keeping up with other assignments, and I was dealing with other.
I'm not trying
things.
to put you on the spot too much. I'm just asking.
No,
This is the way to start thinking when I'm not around. Is, why? Why? What's my reasoning? And to all of us personally, of course, it sounds like completely logical reasoning, right? Every excuse that we could come up with is, oh, it's totally logical. You don't understand, Brent. It's this other thing over here. It's this thing outside of us. So basically for you, it's again changing that conversation about how you have the resources and you have what you want. And I'm going to get into the meat of this soon here so that I can tell you exactly how to do that. But it's basically changing that conversation. And when you ask yourself, when I say, what do you want? And then you tell me and I say, why don't you have it? It's like being aware in that moment that everything that you're going to say is basically an excuse. And just holding yourself to that. And like I said, it's not bad. I'm not making you wrong about it. I'm just saying that these are the things that you'll need to kind of keep in your head about it. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Just have another quick question as well.
Yeah, sure.
What do you usually do to gain more energy throughout the, to do everything that you have to do?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that I do is tell myself I have a ton of energy. And it's a funny thing that you ask that because that's actually in my story every day, my personal one. So when I get up, as soon as I open my eyes in the morning, I have this little mantra. Well, I have an actual whole thing I do. But the very first thing that comes out of my mouth is, today's going to be another great day as usual. I have so much energy right now. I'm already super productive. Now, I haven't even got out of bed yet, right? So I'm already super productive. My life is awesome. Okay, and I also will say that I used to run on a treadmill in my home gym, and I had a big mirror in front of it. So I'm on the treadmill, and maybe I got, 4 or 5 hours sleep the night before. I've been traveling, I'm jet lagged, whatever. Physically, in the reality, I'm tired. But I understand that could be a story too. So there's a way to change your physiology with your mind. It's that powerful. So I will often say, I have so much energy, and I just keep saying it, and all of a sudden I have a lot of energy. Okay, so it starts with your story. Everything, guys, starts with your conversation you have with yourself about it, okay? Yes, there are practical things you can do, and I'll cover some of those. But really, it starts with the story. Okay? Then we could talk about, if I were really coaching you, I would say, okay, well, what is it that you want to get done? Let's practice some efficiency. You need to manage your energy now. So you've told yourself now that you have a lot of energy. Now it's about managing your energy so that you can get everything done that you'd like to get done. So let's talk about those goals. What are they? What do you have to do 30 minutes every day? And chunk it down. 60 minutes a day, 90 minutes a day, every day, 7 days a week to accomplish what it is that you want to have in your life. And again, remember, this applies to everything. So if social life is the only thing you're lacking in, then you would apply it to your social life. You have to go out more. Right? What would you have to do that? You got to work backwards from there. If it's money, whatever. Okay? Thank you for that. Anyone else want to tell me what they want? Okay.
How do I learn to better exercise discipline for the purposes of better being able to consistently exercise the tactics I use to achieve whatever goal that I have set for myself, so I don't mess up my ability to measure those methods and their effectiveness?
Okay, can you repeat that again, just since we had some background?
Okay, how do I better discipline myself to staying consistent with the methods that I use to accomplish a goal so that I can better exercise or better measure how those methods are going to work?
So
and
you
not
want
have them
discipline?
corrupted? Pretty much.
You want better, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
You want better discipline. Okay, so why don't you have that? Why aren't you disciplined? What's your excuse? Like, why is it tough for you?
I honestly don't know. Like, sometimes I'm really on it, and other times I'm just not.
So it's consistency in being disciplined.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so your story is sometimes I am and sometimes I'm not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
I just want to be able to better tap into
Yeah.
the on times.
Right. So the first thing is to change your story about that. Now you guys are going to get sick of hearing me say this, but it's as simple as this to begin, okay? I'm always going to say change your story about that, your personal story, and the story you tell others. You got, man, I am super disciplined. Really? I got so much done during the day that I need more stuff to do because I'm so disciplined, right? And this is the kind of way you tell yourself. You want to have that mantra added to your story. You want to physically, if you can, you want to visualize that. What does that look like to you? Like, what does being disciplined and getting all your stuff done really look like? And then you want to get physically excited about it, okay? So, right? So you understand what your story is, right? Your story is the opposite, right? Okay, again, and then it's a process practically, of course, of figuring out, first of all, removing what you think is stopping you. Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. I don't know, I just want to be more consistent. And then you kind of explore, why am I inconsistent? You could say, well, Brent, I just don't feel like it. Sometimes I don't have energy. I don't know. I goof off. I'm distracted. Those are all stories. And those are all things you're saying about yourself. And the only reason they're true is because you're saying it. Okay? So just a personal story, and thank you for that. Do you have any follow-up question? Do you understand that?
Yeah, I feel like for me, mostly what causes me to lose track on discipline is like I'll have a certain method that I'm trying to achieve a result, and while in mid-process, I'll decide, maybe something else will work better and get tempted to try that so I can achieve my results now. But in the long term, then it messes me up because now none of my data is really measurable because I've just jumped from one thing to another.
Okay, so that conversation is more about whether you should cut and run and try something new because it isn't working fast enough, or whether you should have a little more patience and see something through, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what you need to focus on. Like, I have the patience to see something through and to really make sure I have all the data that it's not going to work for sure before I move on, rather than, right? So, because what you're saying now is that you're kind of the victim of this, right? Yeah, you're kind of the victim of it. We all want to play the victim in some manner. It's something that we just do as humans, trying to say, well, you don't understand, this is what happened. So that would change your story about it first. So you treat it as if you've already solved it. Then you do the practical thing like we just talked about. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. So my story used to be, I had many stories that are changed now, but one of them used to be, just that's kind of related to that, is that, I get distracted very easy. I'm so ADD that, I start one thing and then I can't finish it, and and then I jump around, and that is the reason. If you asked me why I wasn't super successful, that was one of the reasons I would give you. I had a long list of excuses, by the way. Like, if I wasn't, successful with women in the right way, I'd have an excuse for that. Well, you don't understand, because, those beautiful women, they're just bitchy. They have bad attitudes, right? It's not me. They have bad attitudes, right? You don't understand the market. That's why I can't, make more money. And I had all the excuses in the world. And then so one of mine was that I'm distracted and I have ADD and so on. And that is a medical thing for some people. There is a chemical imbalance, and I totally understand that. But part of everything is mental, okay? So that's the thing I do believe now, just from my own experience and coaching for as long as I've been coaching at every level. And by the way, you'd be surprised at how many things are in common with guys, no matter where you are financially or where you are in your life or what phase or how old you are. Everyone's human, and it all comes down to the same wants and needs, basically. So there's a human, there's not human, there's a human component, but there is a mental component to everything. And so once you realize that, and that's kind of your fallback, you start with that. And then yes, there may be a lot of things that are true about what you say, but you go from, look, I'm going to change my story about that. So I started telling myself that I'm super focused, and I'm super efficient, and I get stuff done, and I get it done immediately. And I do think this many things every day, and I'm super on it, and I can stick to something, and guess what? My life started to change, and I started to become all those things that I talked about. And then it occurred to me, wow, that had to do a lot with my story about it. And that to me seemed kind of weird, because I thought, well, no, it's about all these practical things that you have to do. Right? You have to go over there and talk to this group of girls. You have to reach out and do something over here and so on. And yes, those are important things too, but it starts with the mental. So you guys understand that? Is that making sense? Okay. Do you like where this is going? Yes? Okay. You have more questions about it? Okay. So something someone said kind of prompted me to think about back to the wanting and the having. Okay. So we talked about when you're in social situations and you're having interactions, and how, if you are trying to extract value. See, when you focus on wanting, I'm kind of going back to the why wanting is negative, so you can have a negative impact, so you can kind of really get your head around there if you are a why guy. Okay? So when you focus on wanting all the time, what you don't have, you try to extract value from every situation you're in. So you're attached to getting. Okay? Now, when you probably already know, everything you're attached to will cause suffering. Attachment causes suffering. It's fact. It will never be any different. It just is what it is. There are certain things, yes, you should be attached to. Family, friends, your dog, things like this. And you should be compassionate and so on. But we have these unhealthy attachments, and we're attached to getting what it is that we want. So, in the terms that we are kind of speaking in the context we're speaking in, it would be, what are things you want to get? You want to get approval when you're socializing. You want to get a phone number. You want to get a date. You want to get sex. You want to get a girlfriend. You want to get a wife. You want to get comfortable. You want to get courageous. You want to get confidence. And when you come from a place of getting, well, everybody knows it, and they don't want to give it to you. As opposed to coming from a place of giving and helping and adding value to interactions, okay? Now, this is directly connected to changing your story about what you want and telling yourself that you already have it, okay? Because the one thing that switching from wanting to having and from getting to giving really causes is you'd have a different vibe, okay? So this is another thing that I love to talk about, vibe. Everybody thinks it's some mystical thing, vibe. Vibe is caused by your story, 100%. So it doesn't matter what you say or what I tell you to go over and say over here to this person or how to be comfortable over here in this interaction or so on. Your vibe is the thing that is telling the other person or people you're speaking to how to react to you. And they're doing it unconsciously. Does that make sense? So in other words, if you have a very negative view of yourself, low self-worth, you don't like, in the mirror what you see, you're telling yourself all these negative things. Oh, I can't do it because you don't understand, and I've got this thing, and there's this other thing going on, and it's my mom's fault, and society's fault, and all this kind of stuff. That's the vibe you're showing up everywhere with. Does that make sense? So when you change it from wanting to having, you'll actually have a different vibe. So every conversation you go into will be more successful because you actually have that vibe of that you already have stuff and you're carefree about it, and you're not walking around being the desperate, needy guy anymore. You're the guy who seems to have it all together and has this great vibe about it. Okay? Questions about this? Yes?
We were speaking about therapists. They help people do this through years and years, and I know that some people might take like ayahuasca or some type of other drug to change that story. So how do you change the story just by the voice in your head? I mean, like, what would the processes be?
Okay, so good question. All right, so here's what I want you to do. Good exercise. Thank you for bringing that up, because that's kind of where I was going next. All right, so the process for this is to create a new story for yourself, okay? When you go to the therapist, they talk to you about, why do you think that's happening? What happened in your childhood? All this kind of stuff. You could take some mind-altering things if that's your thing, but there's a more practical way to do it. So, when I say story is, if you've all heard of affirmations, right? Pretty much everyone's heard of them. Well, the story is just a weaving together of affirmations, okay? And you all have a story. So I could take any one of you aside and say, hey, what's up with you? What's your story? What's going on in your life? And then you're going to proceed to tell me. And I'm going to say, what are your biggest challenges right now? And you're going to say, well, there's this one thing and there's this other thing. That's your story. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to write all that out. I want you to write it out. You can add everything that's happening, whether it's in dating and relationships, social life, money, family, business, whatever, it's all connected, okay? So you're going to write all of that out as it is occurring for you right now with all your excuses and, this isn't happening, I have a disconnect over here, and every time I go out, I have so much social anxiety or shyness that I can't approach anyone, and when I do, I generally get in a conversation, I don't know what to say next, or every time I apply for a job, I get turned down, what's wrong with me? Is it my energy? What's going on, okay? So you're going to write that out. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to rewrite that story as if you've already accomplished all that. So you've solved all of those problems. So it's like I wave a magic wand over it and all of it's solved. So what would that story be? So you want to write that in the positive opposite, I call it, okay? So that's really important that you do that. Now here's some other things about the story that are crucial for it to work and to create this vibe that we are now talking about of having, okay? This is very crucial. You write your story in the present tense. Remember what I just said, as if you already have solved it and that you have everything you want. Now, this requires a leap of faith because what you might think is, well, Brent, I don't have $1 million and I'm not dating 6 girls that are gorgeous and I'm not, whatever. The creation process begins in the moment that you change your story about it. Okay, yes, there are practical things that need to be done and other actions that need to be taken. But the very beginning, as I've said throughout this talk already, is that it's this story that is going to be the foundation. So you want to write it in the present tense. So it's, I have this, I have that. Every time I walk out of my house, people come up to me, or whenever I approach people or they approach me, they're happy to see me and they ask me questions, and girls say this and do this and that and the other thing. Whatever you're creating, create it in that moment. You've got to have the faith to realize that it's such a powerful process and a powerful beginning to you having what you want. So it's stating that you already have it. Okay? So that's really important. Then the next thing you want to do is you're going to always want to use really positive wording in your story. So you don't want to say things like, this doesn't happen to me anymore, and I can't believe this. And it's no negativity. It's all positive. This now happens to me. I choose to do this, and when I go out, someone says this, and then they give me this, and this is how much money I make and attract. And I attract these types of women, and so on, and so on, and so on. Okay? Now, another thing is that you want to be very specific. I challenge you to be as specific as you can about this. Because if you really want to switch, you want to stop wanting it and start having it. Another thing about story that you kind of have to believe here is that you'll manifest exactly what you state that you have in exactly the way you state it. Okay? So is this speaking to your question? Okay, so you have to. It's got to be the way you state it is the way it will happen. Okay, so you want to, if there's a certain color of something or a certain type of person, type of girl, type of interaction, and so on, state it in the way that you would. Again, if I could wave a magic wand, and don't worry about the extent to which things can manifest. Just if anything could manifest. Within, of course, the reason that we all, the context or constraints that we all already know, what would it be? How would it occur? What would that person look like? What would that thing be? How would it come to you? And so on. Very important. Then the next thing is to visualize it. You want to be able to visualize what it looks like if that were to happen in your life. So what would taking action consistently and managing your energy really look like? Okay, what would it look like for you if you had all that handled? What would your day look like? How would it look different than it looks now when you are thinking back on it, thinking, oh God, why can't I do that? And you have this image in your head. You need to get the image into your head, okay? And then you need to get really excited about it. So remember when I was saying, I have so much energy right now? That right there, you'd be amazed at what you can talk yourself into, okay? And how your body physiology can change with just what you're thinking and what you're saying. Hey, it works with, they have so many studies now that with, people who have terminal illnesses and so on, that their attitude is a big factor in them, coming through and maybe beating what they have. It's one of the things. Now, definitely some practical steps that need to be taken, but attitude is one of them. So it works for a lot of people who have their life on the line. You should take it really seriously, okay? And the reason that I'm really pounding this into you, for you is that it is the thing that stops, people just say, oh, I want this, why don't I have it, and so on. And it's because you just keep focusing on wanting it, when you should just focus on having it. And if you can make that leap where you don't physically have something, but you understand that the beginning of it is stating that you have it, that's a big thing. So is this making sense? Question?
Okay, let's just imagine I'm right to myself, my story. I have a lot of girls. I have huge variety of girls. I'm wealthy, I'm happy, I have huge amounts of friends. But all my body is resisting. It's a bullshit. All my conscious mind say it's a bullshit. It's not true. It's not correct.
Yeah.
You're not rich. You fucking not. You're poor. You're broke. How you deal with this?
Okay, repetition. Okay, that's a habit. Your resistance is a habit. Everything in your life is a habit. So of course, changing information that you're used to hearing, your mind and body might resist that at first. Good question, by the way. So it's called repetition. Another thing that I could add on to what I said is that you have to commit to this new story every single day. Okay? It's a great opportunity for me to talk about this. Okay, so remember how I said when I first wake up in the morning, I have this little mantra? Okay, the rest of my mantra is, do you remember when I said that? You wake up, I say, today's gonna be another great day as usual. I'm so productive already. I have so much energy. My life is incredible. And then I have a grateful list of things that are going great in my life, and I go over that, and then I have a story, my story, whatever I'm working on presently. My business works like this, Every time I go out, I've got a great relationship or whatever it is. And I talk about it. You want to do that first thing when you wake up in the morning, and of course right before you go to sleep, so that your mind can start working on it. And every time during the day that you might have some negativity or doubt about your life, or you just crosses your mind that you think about your life. Because here's what happens. Whatever story takes up the most space in your mind the most often throughout the day is the one you're going to live. So if you just said, oh, Brent told me to do this thing, and I go home and I say this thing once a day, but my life's not changing, well, it's because the rest of the time you have your old story and you're letting negativity in. And negativity is everywhere, right? We all know that. You can turn on the TV, you watch the newspaper, you're on the net, you're on Facebook, looking at other people's fantastic lives that you don't have, right? The highlights from everybody's life. And it's easy to feel like, oh, I'm not good enough or whatever. So you have to constantly be telling yourself this new story, okay? And the great thing about habits is once you have a habit, it's automatic, okay? So the most energy that's ever spent on creating a new habit is at the very beginning, okay? So like you said, your body is, now, if it's a long-term resistance, and maybe we were working together, you and I would have a discussion about what is that block really for you. So if we were working together for a while and you're doing it for weeks and you're saying, look, I'm still resisting, then I'll say, well, it's a little bit deeper than that. There must be some reason you're resisting or you're holding yourself back, playing the victim. There's all kinds of things that I could tell you just from experience and working with, tons of people in my own life about why you're not moving forward. But the habit is the thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, because another thing I wanted to tell you was that, I just said it, but I'll say it a different way, is that at the beginning of a new habit, that's when the most energy will be expelled, okay? It's like a rocket launcher, the space shuttle going up. Most of the energy, most of the fuel is burnt up in the first few minutes. That's it, to get it into the atmosphere. And then it's hopefully smooth sailing, right? Floats through the atmosphere, So that's the way it is when you're changing something about yourself. You're changing a habit. So you might resist, and that's okay, but even when you're doing that, I would still tell you to tell yourself that this new way, this new way of being is so simple, fun, and easy for me to accept. And so I'm accepting it. And so this is how my life is. It's X, Y, Z, whatever you're, creating. Does that make sense to you? Would you be willing to try that? Okay. So good question. Thanks for that.
Just say, try it for a long period of time. Just repeat it.
I would
It's
commit
normal.
to it for 30 days. People will differ on how long they want you to try that, but I would do it for 30 days. And I like going the old school manner, which is buying an old school calendar that you put up on the wall, and you have a marker, and you place an X through every day that you accomplish your story, and you tell it to yourself during the day, and you take action, and you're efficient, and you get things done, because you're living for that next day to cross it off. And by the time you get done with 30 days, you're going to actually be much further. It's going to be a habit, and you're going to do it automatically. Is that something you could do? Okay, good. Awesome question. Other questions about it?
I guess going in the opposite direction of the last question, how would you best manage to avoid getting caught up in the story you're creating for yourself and neglecting to actually do the practical part of it and actually realizing that story?
Okay, put that in your story. I take action all the time, and then you actually have to, make yourself do it, right? So the story, yeah, you're right. So you can't just have your story and take no action, okay? No matter what it is, you're going to have to take some action, even though doing your story is taking action. But if you have things in there, you're like, well, I'm building my business and I'm doing these things, then yeah, you would have to set out a schedule for what you're going to do each day, and you just need to commit to that. But I would always put that in my story if that's my problem. Okay, so what I take is everything that I think is stopping me, and I address it in my story, and that's a good way for you guys to remember it. Just whatever it is. Your resistance, so you want to tell yourself that you have the opposite of resistance. I definitely accept this, and I accept it every day, and so that's why I do it, because it's simple, fun, and easy, and I always remember to do it. That's another one. People will say, I forget. Oh, I forgot to do it, Brent. So I always remember, and it's easy to remember, because it always works, and I always take action, and in addition to doing this story, I take practical action every single day. I'm a master of it, as a matter of fact. I'm a master of it, as a matter of fact. These are very powerful words because you're saying the opposite of what you're really used to saying, which is, I'm not really that good at this. And, I could do the story, but then I probably won't take action. So you want to tell yourself that you actually do take action. Okay? Does that make sense? Kind of?
Sort of. I would worry, like, even if you tell yourself that you actually take action, how do you be able to take a step back and look objectively and say, okay, no, I'm just living that life vicariously. I need to actually take action.
Well, you do that by the results that you're receiving. So you do that by setting up a schedule, like I said, like on Sunday for the week, and then you would either accomplish those tasks or not accomplish them. So it's very simple. You would just look up, you set up whatever system works for you in your brain, the way your brain works, how you would have these milestones. Maybe it's at the end of every day you check to see if you got what you were supposed to done. And maybe you set a timer or, not a timer, but an alarm to check, right? Every day at 6 o'clock, every day at 9 p.m., whatever it is. Task reminder. Did I get stuff done? What did I get done? Right? Sometimes you have to do very, simple things to trick your brain into remembering to do stuff. Because you could get caught up in that, so you're still going back to that, well, what if? Well, what if? Well, what if? So you want to just put that in your story. Okay? Right, micromanage it. Right? How important is it to you to have it? Okay, well, if that's important, then you better start treating it like that. Another little post-it note that I often put on my laptop is, what's the most important thing I could be doing right now? And am I doing it? And if not, why am I resisting it? Why am I not doing it? And then I always want to have a story about it. Well, I don't have time. My day got out of control, whatever. And I know it's just me not managing my energy correctly. Okay? So are you clear on it now? Yes. You understand that? Okay. You're welcome. Okay. Other questions? I kind of want to open it up to more questions now because I want to know what you guys want to know. And it can be on many different subjects. Yes?
Mm-hmm. So used to. Okay. Sorry, there was a little flirting happening between us, but
it happens.
Not a question. But I just wanted to say, just thank you for stressing this message. It's always good for me to hear. I know the times in my life when I'm really kicking ass, it's directly tied to the messages that I'm telling myself, and even I can relate so hard to the procrastination because that's something that I've dealt with myself. And the thing about procrastination, though, is because, like, on the day you need to get stuff done, what's the story you're telling yourself that day? I need to get this stuff done. I'm going to get that stuff done, and you always do. So, I mean, it really comes down to on those days that you're telling yourself that these messages, you're going to get it done, the days you're telling yourself the opposite, you're not. I just want to say thank you because I can never hear that message enough for myself.
You're welcome. I used to be the king of procrastination, so I know very well. And I used to be the king of avoiding taking responsibility. That was the other thing that was a huge issue for me for many, many, many years until I changed my story about that, and then I physically started doing it. So that's good. Yeah, procrastination is one of the biggest things people suffer from, not getting enough done, and then you have all of these excuses, like I said. And one way that I've found that you can start to take responsibility for the excuses is just pretend for 24 hours that excuses don't exist. Okay? So, you either are doing something or you're not doing it. That's it. There's no reason why. Because that'll teach you that you're making up all the excuses for why you're not doing something. Well, I'm not doing it because. There's your list of excuses again. If they didn't exist, you're just doing it or you're not doing it. I'm not doing that. That's it. I'm not doing it. So it makes it clear that simply you could just do it, although you might have a lot of excuses for why you can't. Right? It's this thing that goes around in our head all the time. And that's the kind of way to start having what it is that you want. So it's just really changing that story to, I have this, I have that, and so on. And that's the way you start through.
You mentioned earlier about allocating, 30 minutes out of your day or an hour out of your day to accomplish something. Mm-hmm. How do you do that? I mean, because my mind's everywhere. I'm thinking about 50 million things at a time.
Me too.
How do you, I guess, focus in on one thing for that 30 minutes and then stop and then focus on another thing for the next 30 minutes?
Yeah, okay, good question. I don't like being distracted. That's my story. I don't like being distracted at all. I hate distraction. It's the one thing that it's the biggest thing in my life. I want to focus on certain things. So the way to do that is, I kind of mentioned it before, and I'm just kind of throwing out times and things like that. So the reason that most people don't get things done is because they seem overwhelming to you, right? You have so many of them to do. Oh, my list is super long. I can't even remember the other stuff that's supposed to be on it, and I didn't get it done, and I'm always behind, and there's always stuff left on the list. Well, let me just tell you, there's always going to be stuff on your list that's never done until the next day, because you keep creating new things. So the key is to chunk it down into bite-sized things, pieces of time that you can digest easily. So I started to talk about it, but it's making a schedule. And when I say 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes, you figure out what it is for that task that you're going to do. If I say, okay, tell me, what it is that you want. You say, Brent, I want this one thing. I'm building my business, or I want to do. Okay, great. So what would you have to do 7 days a week for 30 minutes every day between 9 and 10 to make that happen? And during those 30 minutes, again, I'm just choosing a time. You choose your own amount of time. I want you to set a timer or an alarm on your phone, however you do it. You want to get one of those old-time alarms that's really loud, those little timers. That's effective. And I want you to have undistracted work. So I want you to, anything that doesn't need to be on, turn it off. Now, like if you're surfing the net or whatever, turn your email off. I mean, just close your email client or whatever, server, okay? So you want undistracted focus, uninterrupted focus. And you just make that happen, okay? You figure out how to make that happen. You're just committed to it enough to make that happen. I guarantee if you start segmenting your day out like that, you will get so much done, because now you've taken all these gargantuan tasks that you think are overwhelming, and now you've chunked it down, and you've got the 3 main things that you want to get accomplished in the next 90 days or 60 days or 30 days. And now you're just doing each one for 30 minutes a day or 60 minutes. Now here's another key. Whatever the time is, if you do something for 90 minutes, let's say, of uninterrupted focus, you close your door, you turn off your email, turn off your phone, whatever it is, then take a small break after that. Take a small break and goof off and do something. Read a magazine, listen to some music, exercise, do whatever. Then go into the other thing. And don't go over the 90 minutes. That's the other thing. You'll get all excited, but don't go over the 30 minutes or 60 minutes or 90 minutes, and just do it. After like 7 days of this, you will be so much further than you were before, when you used to worry about, how am I going to get this done? This project is ginormous. What I have to do is so overwhelming. Humans just give up when things are overwhelming. We just do. So chunking it down is the key. Great question. Another question. Over here.
Do you think women are better at picking up vibe than men? And if so, why? And how is vibe transmitted from one person
They
to
are, because women get hit on by so many creepy, desperate pursuers, over pursuers, that they are masters of realizing that if you're different, realizing that you're different and have a different vibe. That is a great question. So one of the reasons, yes, I do think they're more susceptible to it because they have more experience, right? They have more experience than you have experience with women approaching you and being creepy, right? Even though that's one of our kind of new banter things we say to women, we go, why are you being so creepy? Even if they're not. It's a funny thing, you should try it.
So how is vibe transmitted, and can you pick it up across a room, or does he have to be in proximity?
Yes, vibe doesn't really have any boundaries. Energy doesn't have any boundaries. If you want to get scientific about it, or if you're a student of physics, if you look at anything and everything underneath a microscope, this table, this television, our bodies, it's all matter. And matter is always moving. So there's energy always happening. And when you're interacting with someone, I often say, everyone takes their cues from you on how to treat you and how to react to you. So whatever you're thinking, if you're having a negative day, if you're worried about you're going to be rejected, that's probably what's going to happen to you because you're carrying that into all your conversations. So, in fact, vibe is so powerful and energy, that it's even captured in pictures that people take of you. Seriously, what you're thinking in that moment and how you're living your life is captured in a picture. The reason I know this is because there are men who put a picture, and we do these experiments too at our company, where we put pictures up of guys who have great attitudes on online dating things, platforms like Tinder and Bumble and things, with no explanation, no about me, nothing, just one picture. And the messages start rolling in. There's no outreach at all, ever, of any kind. There's no message ever written. There's no, hey, it's nice, I liked your profile. There's no swiping. Nothing, zero. It's a picture. It's energy. So that's how important energy is, and that's how people can feel it. So think back any time in your life that you might have witnessed that. Someone walks into a room, and you go, gosh, they're really negative. They have like negative energy. I don't know what it is about them, but just feel like it's like a weird vibe, right? Or, contrary to that, someone walks in and you say, wow, I don't know what it is about that person, but they're so charismatic, and I can't even put my finger on it, And what happens with vibe, though, is this. People make unconscious decisions on how to react to you. So, as humans, we're making so many decisions on how to react and what to do in a millisecond when we meet someone. Our attention spans are getting shorter. We've got so much stuff that we got to consume, and we've got to filter out and filter in and so on, that really it's just an automatic thing that happens. So someone doesn't know why they're doing it. They're just reacting to you in a certain way. This is why that this is so important to work on your vibe, because let's take women, for instance. You could stand in a place and you could pick out a beautiful woman who every guy's trying to talk to. Bunch of guys walk over to her. You see them kind of fail one after another. They walk up, they say something. She sends them away. Then a different guy walks up. The right guy. The guy who has it all together. He's carefree, he's confident, doesn't want anything. Super cool, has this great vibe. The same girl starts lighting up. She doesn't know why. She just is lighting up. She feels compelled to know more. She's intrigued. She may have never done it in her whole life, but she has an instantaneous state change. That's how strong vibe is. And that begins with your story. And that is connected to changing wanting to having. Does that make sense? Do you have a follow-up question or? Okay, great question.
How do you adapt your story when it's not successful? It's not going well.
Okay, so if your story's not working, it's always one of a few things. So either you don't believe what's in your story, that it's possible that it can happen. That's one thing. You could be, I'll tell you the number one thing. Number one thing, reason the story doesn't work, is you're not doing it consistently. It's the number one thing. I always say, Brent, I forgot to do it. Well, Brent, the story's not working. I go, well, are you doing it every day? Well, I'm doing it 4 days a week. And the other 3 days, what are you doing the other 3 days? Well, I don't know, I'm not doing it. Well, then the other 3 days are packed with negativity. Of course your story's not going to work. So are you doing it consistently? So these are the things you check. Am I doing it consistently? And if not, do it consistently. Do you believe? Are you really? And if you don't believe, you add in there, I believe everything in this story because it's simple and fun and easy and it happens all the time and this is the life I'm living. Are you writing in the present tense? Or did you misinterpret what I said and you say, someday I'll have, or I intend to have, which will never happen, by the way. Someday becomes never. always. So that's why it's much quicker to have stuff when you say, I have it. I already have it. Are you using positive wording in your story? Like I've covered already. Are you using all positive words? Challenge yourself. Maybe you're being too vague. Okay? I have a new car. Well, what kind of new car? What does that mean to me? Like if you had to prove to me that there was evidence that you, like, oh, Brent, this is happening. Really, show me. Like, what goes on? I kind of think about it like this when it comes to being specific. Pretend that I have to understand what it is that you want. Physical, I have to know what it is. So I'm kind of like, you're placing an order with me in your story. Your story is like an order form. And you're saying, Brent, I want a new car, and let's say around my office people are saying, hey, so-and-so wants a new car. I go, great, what kind of car does he want? He didn't state what kind of car. Okay, so send him any new car. Does that make sense? He didn't say what color her hair was, what color the car was, how much money he was making. So just send him some money. Oh, remember when he said, all girls want me? Just send him all girls want him. Including girls he doesn't want. See what I'm saying? So be very specific. So it's things like that. So there's always like 4 or 5 things that are usually not happening. And you may not be visualizing, and you may also not be getting excited about it. Okay? So those are things to check. So do those. Back here?
We have one more, and we're about at the last 5 minutes.
Okay.
The question about vibes. You actually can read, spread the good vibes. I don't know if you can see this.
Well, let me put my glasses on. Oh, spread good vibes, yes, okay.
Okay, so this is the question. You brought example of somebody coming to girl and something, she instantly feeling the vibes and she immediately changed it. How do you change your vibe to vibe that such amazing guy has, except in addition to writing story? You actually say that writing story should supposed to change your vibes.
Yes.
Do you have to do something additional?
Yeah, okay. I can offer you something additional.
How to create these amazing vibes so you approach the woman and she immediately, wow.
Okay. All right, great question. Okay, so the beginning is your story, obviously. And by the way, when you commit to a story and it becomes who you are, and it will become who you are the more you repeat it, you will start standing differently when you go out. You'll approach people differently. You'll be more confident. You'll carry yourself. So you don't need any tips on body language or whatever. You will just start to appear, and you will start to occur, more importantly, different than you have been before to the same people. You will just occur that way. Now, practically, yes, you will stop doing some things that you currently do or used to do when it comes to pushing this new, not pushing this, but presenting this new you, okay? So let's take the context of women. So instead of walking up to women with this, wanting, desperate, needy vibe where you're going to try to push yourself on them, you're trying to corner them, trying to manipulate them, trying to get them to go out with you, you're not going to do any of that anymore, right? So there's no complimenting them, because we don't know the difference between complimenting and over-complimenting, right? Pursuing and over-pursuing. That's why I just say, cut it out. Stop doing it and relax and have a good time and don't worry about it and let it happen. And so you're going to give these women actually a moment to be interested in you for the first time in your life, rather than you constantly saying stuff and trying to figure out what to say next. And she's like, the usual guy is standing here in front of me. So it's the story you tell yourself, and then of course there are practical stuff you should stop doing. So you just think about what most guys would do and what you currently do, which is you walk up, you're talking to some girl, you really are hitting on her, and you really do want something. And not only that, not only do you want something, but you're afraid you might not get it. And then what does that mean about you when you don't get it? And then you're going to be angry that you didn't get it, and there's something wrong with her, not you. And so then you're going to say things like, you're going to say pursuer things like, oh, we should get together sometime. We should go on a date. Oh, you're so pretty. You have the most beautiful blue eyes. And, I could go on and on and on. We should go on all these traditional dates. Why don't you go to Cabo San Lucas with me this weekend? Okay, you're going to stop doing that crap. You're going to stop doing all that traditional dating stuff that doesn't work. Hasn't worked for so long. I could talk another 9 hours on that, or 9 days on that. Just doesn't work. So you're gonna keep yourself, you're gonna discipline yourself to not do what you used to do that is in the form of overdoing things, over-communicating, over-pursuing. You're just gonna stop all that. And that, along with your new vibe, should work. There's more to it than that, but that's the best way I can kind of explain it to you right now. Did you have another question? One more?
Got 2 minutes.
Okay.
When it comes to your vibe, I know that sometimes whenever you're in I don't know, take for example, if you're in a negative environment, that can have an effect on your vibe. So how do you maintain that sense of positivity in a negative environment, or in an environment where there's
live in the
negative?
present moment. Stop being in your head. Stop living in the future and stop living in the past. In the moment, rise above it. You're above it. First of all, you tell yourself you're above it. Everywhere I go, I have a positive vibe. Everywhere I go, my positive vibe inspires other people to be positive. But you have to believe that. Believing it or convincing yourself starts with telling yourself that you believe it. And that's the way that it works, and then it will spread out. Practically in the moment, okay, because I know that's your real question, practically in that moment, you just have to either remove yourself from the situation, or you have to just take a deep breath. That's what I do. Take a deep breath and just let it go. Let that negativity go, and say, inside you want to say to yourself, I'm a positive person. I'm totally rising above this. I'm going to stay positive here. They can be negative if they want. It has nothing to do with me. And you can only be as positive as you can be. Okay? You have to rise above it. You have to tell yourself that you can do it at all times. Okay? Thanks. Great question.
That's about all the time we have.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys, give it up for Brent
Appreciate
Smith.
it. Thank you. Thank you.